Hello, just getting started. Try to give people a few minutes to join. I'll check on my phone and see if it is live because I know there's been a lot of issues with comments lately. Hey Carol, okay, I see comments on my phone but not on the screen, so I'll just periodically check on here. Wonder if I can sync it on the computer. No. All right, so I will just check on my phone periodically. So I know Carol had joined. I think that's it so far, but I'll just go ahead and get started and then just drop stuff in the comments. I'll check it. And then, of course, after the live, if you're watching on the replay, definitely comment throughout. Make sure you get your minimum 5 comments in. And yeah, I'll keep checking and responding. So today I'm pretty excited about this live. I feel like it's really good timing. We just had Erica talking about affirmations, and I feel like it's kind of right on point with this. So really excited. And we are going to be talking about magical etymology. So does anyone know what that is? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. And if you know what etymology is, do you know what magical etymology is? Guesses are totally fine. Let me see if I have anything come through. Hi, Em. Welcome. I am sorry that you were under a tornado warning. That sounds awful. Hi, Jenny. And Carol, no worries. You can jump in and out anytime and watch on the replay. So Carol's not heard of it. Just totally cool. I love being able to teach about stuff like this. And for those watching that maybe just joined, I'll have to look at my phone to get the comments because it is not working on my computer, unfortunately. Okay, so let's talk about etymology. It is the study of the origin of words and how their forms and meanings have changed throughout history, or how words change through time. So there's tons of examples of these. But essentially it looks at the roots of the words, and it involves tracing a word's earliest recorded usage, its shifts in the definition, and its transmission throughout different languages. Often it uses root words that are either Greek or Latin. So English is especially hard to do this with. English is a Germanic language. But even within the English language, even though it comes from the Germanic styles, like what you would have in like Sweden or Norwegian, things like that, over 60% of the words are Latin based, so it still has a lot of that. And there's a lot of Greek words too, and it's just all combined together. English also drops the masculine feminine aspects, and I believe even the Germanic languages had that too. Of course, and then we had Old English, and now we have Modern English too. So there's trends and slang and all kinds of stuff changes all over the time. But other than that, we'll still be able to like figure things out, but it is just a little bit harder with English as a whole. So when we look at the roots, we're going to be looking across different languages, and a lot of the roots are actually associated with mythology and basic things that shape the world. So these could be like tools or materials or elements. A lot of these things are actually aligned in the root. And there's also pictorial languages, and these are often like proto-languages even before some of the ones we'll talk about, but these incorporate shapes into their etymology. And the shape is actually like a picture. It actually looks like the thing, not just like a kind of randomized letter. So Chinese is a language that has that. Hebrew and then Egyptian language, like all those hieroglyphs are a pictorial language. So with that, you can actually look at the picture of the word or the letter and literally see the meaning of the word just based off of that because the letters themselves are pictures. So I think that is pretty cool. Um, an example of what I'm kind of talking about in terms of the Latin-based types of languages is with the days of the week. So we just had a book club on planetary magic, and a lot of people do know this as well, where the different days of the week are aligned to planets. And in Latin languages like French or Spanish, it's really clear what those are. Like Monday is Mars, and that's the planet. So it makes sense because those are the Latin names of the mythology. But in English, sometimes it's kind of hard to see these. Some of them are a little bit more, or sorry, Mars is actually the month. But Monday is like Moon Day or Lundi or Luna. So it's really close to see it on that. But it's also with the months. Sorry for my mix up on that. All right, let me check the comments. Yes, and that is the meaning and the structure of the word. And Carol mentioned that's so funny because she has a game called Pictionary. Yeah, Pictionary definitely could, works with the drawing of the word. But this is kind of like in like Hebrew, for example, there's a letter Vav and it's a nail. And it looks like a nail. So the letter itself looks like a nail. And then the words associated with that spelling are often something that like drives something down, just as a nail would be. Yeah, Jenny, there's lots and lots of languages out there, and so many dead languages too, or just ones that are completely lost to us. So it's a complicated topic. I am certainly no expert in this by any means, but wanted to just give some information about like etymology in general. So you're probably wondering, like, what does this have to do with witchcraft and magic? So that is what I'm here to talk to you about through the hard stuff, which is like what I just talked about, all the, the history and how it all connects. So let's talk about the magic and the witchcraft, which is the fun stuff. So I talked about like the gods and the mythology and the days of the week, but there's a lot more. So words in themselves are magic. And we know this because it's like the truth that we speak, the words that we write. Like anytime we're using a spell or an incantation, we're working with words. There's some belief systems that think like magic sort of originated out of words and being able to write the written language, and that is kind of what makes a magician. So there's some thoughts along that. Even outside of like magic stuff, there's also just the idea of humans being different than other animals and that we have like a written language. Like no other animal has that. So words are magic. And what if the words that you chose had a deeper meaning? And what if you could craft a spell with more intention because you really understood the deeper meaning of the word? And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about today. If you were working with a word and something came to you through like meditation or through synchronicity, if you see something like over and over and over, you're working with a spell and a word like really stands out, or anything else, you can actually start to really decode some of those words and find a hidden meaning. And that in itself can be a truly magical and eye-opening practice. So words control your reality. And I want you to sit with that for a minute and think about something maybe that someone has said that has shifted your beliefs, whether for good or bad. Yeah, just sit with that for a minute. Words control your reality. And if you feel compelled, would love for you to share an example in the chat of a time that your reality shifted because of something someone said. Or maybe you said something to someone else and you heard later that that really changed things for them. All right, let me check the chat. Yeah, Carol says happy Venus Day. Yes, Venus for Friday. And M mentioned that words are always powerful. And Jenny said the same, that words are very powerful and she watches what she says. All right, and those watching on the replay would definitely love to hear like anything that you feel compelled to share. You know, the stories that we share with each other oftentimes I think are some of the most powerful. So you may be controlled by words intentionally or unintentionally because you have not grasped the true meaning of that word. So I think it's a really cool way to think about that. And, you know, it kind of has a little bit of mind control to some degree. And we think about things with magic where we have like the swords that is tied to communication and to air. And the sword is very, very powerful. It can be a really big weapon, or it can defend you really well. You know, you can hurt someone else with it, or you can use it for defense. So those things are all really aligned to words and language. Oops, I lost where I was in my notes here. So different words have different frequencies, and this actually affects your biology and your nervous system differently. So there's been tests on this kind of stuff. So there's tests and studies with water where people have spoken different words over water, and they're trying to keep, you know, a really monotone type of speech so that it's really aligned to the word itself. And the water behaves differently under it because of that frequency. Or they can even use, I think I even saw, like, double check this on me, but I'm pretty sure I saw one time that they even had like a machine using the word. So it was a little bit different than like a person. But the water will have a different pattern based off of that frequency. We also see this kind of stuff with sand. So different tones and music notes and words as well will change the patterns in the sand. So if you think about our bodies, there's 70% water. So those things that affect water affect us. And then even in the solid state with the sand, things are moving around. So it's pretty interesting to think about. And that's frequencies in general. But words are also frequency. So kind of going back to that tarot example, if you go through each of the cards like 1 through 10 and look at how the words play an impact in the meaning and the outcome of the card, you may have a deeper understanding of those cards. So if you think about, okay, if someone was to speak something about the situation in like the Seven of Swords, for instance, right? Like, how does that affect me? So you can look at that and you can see the woman standing there with the blindfolds on, and how would she get out, right? So you can think about, is it the 7 or the 8? One of those. But you can look at each of those situations and really think about if someone said something differently, that card may have a different outcome. It's a good way to really practice with this type of knowledge. So words, frequency, and meaning can actually program how we think. So if we're constantly hearing the same thing, we're constantly being exposed to the same kinds of frequencies, it can actually start programming how we think and how we operate. So if you understand this, you can actually start to deprogram things that were put on you. You'll begin to wield the power to program yourself in a new way, or if you so deviously choose, to program others. You can also use the power on a greater level against others to heal them and to help them. But again, you can also use it for control. So up to you and how you want to do that. But either way, if you don't want to be projecting this onto others, you can take the time to understand this so that you don't fall prey to being controlled by others. Or if you do, we still fall prey to things, right? You can get out of that kind of situation, and you'll at least be able to see through manipulation. One example that I think is really interesting like this is the word understand. This one is an easier one because the roots are pretty obvious. We know what the word under means, and we know what the word stand means. So understand, we kind of think about that as being, um, do I know something? What's my knowledge? do I like do I get what you're saying? But it actually means I yield to you. Like I am now putting myself beneath you. So I don't think most people realize this when they say, like, do you understand me? But it's actually very aggressive. It's a very aggressive thing to say. And when someone says, like, yes, I understand, or, no, I don't understand, it's really a subordinate position. Um, and a lot of people do know this and use it in a certain way. And systems use it a certain way, even if the people saying it don't. So I think that's a really interesting, an interesting example to think about. So language has always been used in ritual, and this is really throughout history as well. So whether it's chanting, you can think of like, Buddhist types of monks and things like chanting a certain word in Sanskrit. Um, we repeat allegiances for all kinds of things. Like I certainly grew up having to pledge allegiance in school. In performing high magic, we use things word for word out of a grimoire. People often recite the same Bible verse. There's all kinds of things that we use that are essentially repetitive rituals and contain certain frequencies. So you do have to use discernment with this. You don't want to go down you know, just a kind of overloaded path where every single thing you hear, you now start thinking is like a frequency or something crazy. So not everyone is speaking these types of things, and not all of these words you're going to be wanting to like look into and understand on a deeper level. Here I go using that word. But to really think about, using your discernment when to apply this type of work. So you can look at how, when, where, and why things are happening. So use your senses. Are you hearing things in repetition? Is it have like an important use case when you're hearing things? Does repeating it serve a higher purpose or a deeper purpose when you hear something over and over? So those are all things that you can really consider as you're like, should I look at the etymology of this word, or does this have more meaning than I think it does? So those are kind of times to look into that. So you wouldn't want to do this, of course, for like your entire life, like everything you ever hear. But there's a time and place for it. And just knowing about etymology and how this works in a magical sense is often enough to really unlock things. You don't have to be a master in this stuff. Like I certainly am not. But just knowing that it even exists gives you a much deeper understanding. And it's about understanding the roots of things versus memorization. And that's actually something that really changed in education too. So, through history, a lot of people were educated on etymology, and that's something that completely was removed. And the memorization makes it lose meaning. And it's really fascinating to think about what AI will do, because now you don't even have to think about the word choice and what the word means from a memorization. Now you don't even have to think. That's like auto fill for your sentences on emails. You can draft everything up. So I have no idea. I don't think anyone knows, or maybe someone does, but what AI is going to do with this. But people not understanding the root has a big change in understanding language as well. The memorization takes the learning process out. So it's also about intentionally linking things in your mind and also in your reality so that you can understand how it all connects in a deep way. So again, it's not about memorizing what every single one of these root things means. It's really the fact that you can just be like, oh, I can just look that up and then I can see and then I know how to connect things so that you can do the work when you feel called. So a lot of magic and occult knowledge in general is really hidden in plain sight, and language is one of those places. Who here loves runes? Drop it in the chat or hit the like button or something. So if you are a rune lover, don't forget that the runes are in fact an alphabet, and not so much the witches' runes, but more like the Norse runes. Those are an alphabet, and same with actually the Ogam runes as well. Each of those corresponds to a letter in a full alphabet. And we do all kinds of things with runes. We make bind runes, we put the letters together, we do all of this kind of stuff. And that is essentially a lot of the workings that you would do with other magical systems with letters. And so it's pretty interesting to think about. You may already be doing some of this if you work with runes without even knowing it. So our thoughts really create our reality. So I know we've all had times when we tell ourselves negative things, and then we start really believing them, or vice versa, right? Ideally, we're doing positive things, but I'm sure we've all had times in our life when, we think like, oh, I'm a really bad singer, or, I'm fat, or whatever it is that you tell yourself. We all have different things, and maybe it's because someone told us at one point, but we start creating these thoughts and that creates our reality. So who thinks in words? I do. I think everyone does. There are some people that can think in pictures, but those people still think in words. It's not like they only think in pictures. So as we're thinking, we're actually using those words to control our internal reality. And if the words you are using actually have that different meaning than you're intending, you might be corrupting yourself with what it is that you're thinking. If you're trying to say, hey, I don't have any examples on this, but if you're trying to say like you're a great person, you find out that great doesn't really mean what you think, then there could be some frequency that's maybe holding you back on this on an energetic level. So if you were to create like an affirmation or a mantra or something that you tell yourself daily or all the time, it is a good idea to maybe look a little bit more into this to make sure that you're on track and that you really deeply understand what it is that you're saying and not just crafting words that you think mean something. So going back to that example of understand, that is a type of what's called victim language. And we're doing this all the time in our daily lives. We don't really we don't understand. It's hard. I'm using that because it's like in the tip of my head. We don't realize that we are doing this a lot of times, and it's habitual. Even as I'm like planning this live out, it's very hard to not do these things that we are so conditioned to do all the time. But it affects our nervous system. When we say things like, oh, I'm trying to do this, or, I can't do this. I need this in order to succeed. I hope I can get this. All of these things like really affect our nervous system because it disempowers us. And it's not like one time, it's just a constant over and over. And it affects how we think, how we behave, and how we heal. So you can change to more creator language. So you're positioning yourself in power. Like, I am ready to do something like this. I am capable. I do have the things that I need, or I have what I need to take the next step. So it kind of gives you more of that sovereignty versus staying beneath or under another system. So you can think about that. And again, this doesn't really matter on the every single time you speak. It's when you're trying to do something intentional, and especially when you're trying to wield magic. So if you're trying to craft your own spells, um, this is important, especially as you start writing things and really crafting and not just finding something you find online. And sometimes what you find online may not really be any good. The person that wrote that may not know about this stuff, so it's important to start learning. Okay, I'm gonna check the comments because I know that is a lot of info. Okay, let me go back. M mentioned that she's seen this done with plants, and the kinder you are, the better the plant grew. I think that is a fantastic example. I have heard about that too, and yeah, the frequencies and the words and all kinds of stuff with the plant. That's amazing. Yeah, it really does, Jenny. It makes you think about things differently. And M mentioned she can see that and that she's always gotten almost nervous when asked if I understand something. Yeah, and I think like we have some of this like in our bodies, right? Like maybe past life knowledge or whatever. Like some of these things could have been very known at some point to us. I don't know, just that's what's coming to mind. But there's we have some kind of knowledge connected to these roots within languages. And Jenny mentioned when I was in school, my teacher said something more than once, it got her attention more. Yeah, I think it's important. The repetition, it does. It gets your attention. It starts to sink in a lot more. Hi, Ronette. You are, like, we did start a little bit, but there's still plenty more to go. And of course, you can always catch the beginning at the replay. M doesn't have much experience with runes, and that's totally fine. I don't use runes a whole lot myself, but I think they're very cool. Still trying to learn them, but there's a lot you can do. And Jenny does, she's learning them as well. M also mentioned that she can't visualize things in her mind, and it makes meditation really challenging. So yeah, I would say just with visualization, it's a muscle that you have to really develop and keep up with. It's hard. It's hard to learn to do that. I'm glad this is interesting to you, Ronette. And yes, English is one of the hardest languages to learn. There's just so many more words than any other language, too. M mentioned that sovereignty is something that keeps circling around her. She's hearing it everywhere, and I have to start taking that creator language more seriously. Yeah, if that word is popping up, that is quite a powerful, interesting word in itself. It's a good one. Okay, so some things to consider. No one has the time or brain power to do this for every word. We kind of chatted about this a little bit already. We obviously use words all day, every day, and it's important to kind of use that discernment again when you're using this and when you're trying to think about stuff. And also, a lot of people don't have any idea about this. They don't even maybe know what etymology is. They don't even understand that words have come from somewhere. And a lot of people are speaking things they just hear and they repeat and they're parroting back. And there may or may not be any intention there, right? But learning about it is just kind of all you can really do, and then figure out where you want to go from there. So things to consider, like an example with birds is, you know, we see birds all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has a meaning for you from the divine when you like walk outside and you hear birds chirping, because you probably hear that every day. But if you use discernment, you could, you know, maybe if you're thinking about a very specific thing and you see a very specific bird, and that happens like 3 different times, like that might have a meaning. If you, like a bird landed in front of you, like that could have a meaning. And yeah, so if there's something more to it, that's kind of where you can start. And discernment in itself could be a whole life, and I think it's really critical thing to develop as well with witchcraft specifically. really in all of life, but witchcraft, it's very important. All right, so we're going to go through some examples on how to do this, and depending on what kind of device you're on, I know if you are like on your phone, you might not be able to leave the Facebook live to do this, but you could do it after. If you're on a computer, maybe open another tab and we can do this together. So there's a few different ways that you can pull etymology online very simply. You can do this in Google. It actually breaks it down. And not every single word is going to have the ability to do this. There are modern words, all kinds of stuff, but a lot of words, especially ones that, you know, are just used in like frequent stuff, it's there. So we'll try this. Go to Google, and another website that I really recommend is, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's, I guess, Etymonline, E-T-Y, like etymology, E-T-Y-M, and then the word online, O-N-L-I-N-E.com. It's one of the first, at least on my algorithm, that comes up when I use Google anyway, and I found it to be very accurate. So either way, they work pretty good. So go ahead and just type in the word understand. And I'm going to do this on my phone as well, at least for a few of them, because I have most of them in my notes. So you can type in the word understand and then the word etymology, or you can put it into that Etym online. So we'll put understand. That was the example we used. And then you'll see where it talks about like standing under and that yielding. Undertake, under some of the different aspects of it. But if you click on like the root or the word parts, you can see that too. So even the STA, it's the hind part of a ship. It's the stow, it's the back, and so it's put in the back. So it's kind of interesting as well, the same thing, right? But even brought into other words. So another one that's really fascinating is the word hypocrite. And a lot of times we say like, oh, don't be a hypocrite because you are like, just an easy example, like, I want to lose weight, but I'm too tired to go to the gym like every week, right? People are like, oh, you're such a hypocrite. Well, that's not really intended like the way the word, that's not used the way the word is intended. So if you look at hypocrite, that one is all about hypokros, I think it is. Check on that as well. But it's like it's the big part about it is that it's on a stage. Okay, so it comes from Hippocrates, which means an actor or a stage player. So one of the really important things about the word hypocrite is that it has to be projected onto others. So if you're saying like, oh, I, didn't eat healthy, or I didn't go to the gym or whatever, that's not projecting anything onto someone else. So you have to do something that's on a stage that you have an audience. So that's a pretty interesting one too. Another example is a mortgage. So you think about buying a house, you get a 30-year mortgage or whatever that is going to be, 50 years. I think I keep hearing about that these days. You're putting into that. So if we think about the root, mort is death, like a mortician, right? And then the gauge is like a pledge. So you're actually making a death pledge to work to pay that off, which is pretty interesting, right? To think about that. So when you are getting a mortgage, people actually celebrate these things a lot of times, but it's actually a death pledge. So you're pledging 30 years of, labor, slave labor, essentially. You're putting yourself in there. It's your death pledge, and in 30 years, you'll get out. So that's essentially what that is, and that's where the root comes from, and it does align with history in terms of how these things work. Okay, so let's do some magical ones. This one pretty obvious when you think about it, but the word spelling is a spell. So when you're spelling a word, you are creating a spell, and spell itself is about forming words with letters. So as we do this, all of it is spell work, which is pretty interesting. And like I mentioned, of things in the occult like being hidden in plain sight, that's a pretty obvious one. But I certainly didn't know about it until maybe a year or two ago, like relatively recent concept for me on some of this. And then grammar is another really cool one. Does anyone know what that comes from? Maybe I'll make you look it up. Think about it. So grammar is a really fascinating one. Grammar comes from grimoire. That one like gives me chills. It is a book of conjuring magic, and we know all about grimoires. They have all kinds of ancient knowledge. We pull all types of stuff out for everything from all kinds of stuff, numerology to demonology to all the things, right? So we pull all this stuff out of grimoires, making sigils, planetary magic, alchemy, everything comes out of grimoires. And that's grammar. That is where the word grammar comes from. And it's kind of having that accuracy, that correctness of using it. So hopefully those things blow your mind a little bit. I know I actually recently just learned about the grammar one, and it blew my mind coming from the grimoire. So I think that is super, super cool. All right, let me check the comments. So definitely love to hear what you think so far. Get this to work. I'm gonna get back to the video. I got lost. All right. Jenny, that's so interesting that birds are going around your building in a giant circle. That is very strange. So I would agree, like, that's probably something to look into, unless they do that all the time. But yeah, thank you, Em, for dropping that website in the chat. And Carol, no worries. Replay is always here anytime. And Jenny, I totally understand. I don't think it would work on my phone either. Em says maybe she won't buy a house. She doesn't love the idea of a death pledge. Yeah, I'm in one, but it is what it is. So, but it's interesting to think about that way. And Jenny mentioned that it's interesting to learn different words, so this live is perfect for her. I'm glad. Yeah, it is really interesting, and it makes you think about things differently. So now we're starting to think, we're starting to decode, figure out how to work with words in a different way. But now how can we use them even more magically? Because kind of the first step in magic is understanding, like just knowing kind of what it is. And then now we can work it a little bit more, which is the extra fun part. So ways to work with words in magic is one way is through numerology. So there's tons of different systems for this. There's all different types of like number and letter charts. I could not find my numerology book, but it had quite a few examples in there, so I was going to pull it up. But you can also search on Google. There's all different types of tables, and there's a lot of different ones. In ceremonial magic, we have huge ones, like we have in the Sefer Sephirot in Crowley's book. We've got all types of everything. I don't even see anything like this, but each one of these has like a number associated. I think it goes to 777. So basically 1 through 777, you can find a bunch of info about anything with that number. So there's lots of ways you can slice and dice this. It's really up to you to find a system that works for you. Even within like tarot, you know, you have major arcana and you have 22 cards, you got 22 numbers right there. You can break down words differently, so you could look at each letter aligned to a number. You could add them all up. You could, um, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like break them down. So if there's like 11, you would add like 1 and 1 and get 2. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. And my recommendation, if you've never done anything like this, is just pick one and try it out. So pick it, try it out, stick with it for a little while. If you don't like it, try a different one. You'll eventually find something that works for you. And just like everything in magic, you will start finding the synchronicities that will tell you that you are on track. And once you have a system that works, now when you look up those certain words, you can look up more about them. I work a lot with like the Kabbalah for the ceremonial magic, so I have this giant encyclopedia, and you know, there's tons of systems. This is just one, but I can look up even the word itself and find out what the numerology is. I actually wish I had an example. Let me see if I can find one, because this book allows me to look up by number and then also by word. Try word really quick. Sorry, this is slow. Okay, so this is interesting. This is real time, real magic, and synchronicity is working for me. So I was like, let's use understanding, since that is the word that we had. Probably gonna be backwards for you guys, but if you really want, you can screenshot and flip it. But I looked up understanding, and it says go to Binah, which is one of the spheres in the tree of life, and underneath it, it has like understanding and all kinds of stuff. So it's the third Sephiroth, and it aligns to the sphere of Saturn. So I think that's like kind of an easy one on here, because Saturn is about restriction, and subordination falls in that a lot too, because it's like restricting, so standing behind. So that same example. And yeah, it's really interesting kind of thinking about that alignment there. And then there's more that is more complicated, but you know, that's an example of like one of those real world kind of things you can do. There's other ways to work with that. That's kind of the more ceremonial magic side, but also good old Buckland's has like a whole bunch of info in here too. Oh shoot, I did not save the page. Sorry, I like got all this together, and then today has been super crazy with work, so I didn't get to like prep like I wanted to. Okay, so this one talks about in different numerology. So we have like the numbers with the tarot. We kind of talked about that. And of course, if you study the tarot, you already kind of know what those meanings are. This has some Kabbalah in it as well. And then with the numerology, like each of the numbers has its own meaning, but they also have a lot of different correspondences. So this one has like the letters associated to different planets. And so this has like the numbers up at the top, and the elements as well. And then if you go down, it talks about like the sun and the moon and which letters align to that. So there's like a whole lot that you could do with any of these. And actually it gives you some formulas in here. I didn't like read through all of it, but Buckland's, you know, it's pretty solid. So there's a lot of different formulas and things that you can do. So if you wanted to like read any of these or get like a book on numerology, you can too. It has the numbers aligning to each of the colors. So like red is 1, orange is 2, yellow is 3. So you could do art with like a specific word as well. And then of course astrology has a lot of numbers too, with the houses and the degrees. So you can kind of pick the flavor of like what it is that you like. And there's tons of ways you can do this. And again, this can work really well if you're trying to really understand or sit with the meaning of a word in like a very, very deep way. And you can also craft a sigil out of that. So if you're using one of those charts, you could definitely use like an astrology chart. There's also a lot of like various charts out there and things. So if you're using the number, and then like if you were going to use the number like 1, 2, 3, you could draw a sigil like on the astrology wheel going from like house 1, 2, and 3 to just be kind of a little loopy line. But you could go all over the place with that too. So whatever system you're using, you can make it your own, and that's like your own secret sigil, which is really cool. And if you wanted one that like connects in with a different group, you could get the, whatever they use in that group. So that's kind of the numerology side. We talked a lot about the sigil side too. So when you're using those charts, you can just draw a sigil like right on top of it. We also talked about the I always can't pronounce this right, but Commantria, which is like Crowley's stuff in the Sefer Yetzirah. And then also the like Kabbalistic Encyclopedia. There's a few versions of that stuff out there that have just done all the work for you, but you can also create your own system if you prefer. And if you want to try to like use divination into this, you can use bibliomancy. So you could use bibliomancy to find a word and then go down a rabbit hole with that as well. And so when you do this work, part of the magic lies in finding the synchronicity when you're working through it. And then it's like you don't know what it's going to be, right? There's no way you can memorize, look at the size of these books. Like there's no way anyone can memorize this whole thing, right? So as you're looking things up, then it's just like you'll see like, wow, how does that align? Like that has a lot of meaning, and that is aligning for a reason. And so that lets you know that you're thinking what you're trying to do is on track, or if it's not aligning, maybe it is not on track at all. So it's a good way to have that like check and balance, especially if you're not feeling in tune with your magic. This is really helpful. Like if you're feeling dysregulated, or you're like, I just cannot tap into what I normally can, this is a really good way because it gives you structure without needing that intuition necessarily. So again, it's not something you're going to do for every single thing that you work on, but it's really nice to have in your toolkit. All right, so I wanted to give you like a little hint of a spell, let you kind of craft your own. But there's ways that you can kind of help filter some of this frequency that gets put on you with language, because we all have, just even marketing and billboards, right? We have tons of ads coming our way. We have quotes and phrases and all kinds of stuff that people just say and repeat all the time, whether it's like jargon at your job or things on the news, or like whatever it is, or ads. Like there's so much that comes at you, stuff people say that you don't want to hear. So there's a lot that you can do, and it is kind of already tied into regular magic work. But in the morning, you can do some type of shielding work. So you could create a bubble, you could do like the white light thing, like whatever it is that feels good to you, or even what you're already doing. You could just add a little phrase or add a little intention to do that with language and frequencies. And then in the evening, you can banish that. So you could, strip whatever is not aligning to your higher purpose, or what's not working for you, and things that you don't want in your frequency. You could use like a grounding into the earth ritual. You could do that in a bath. So if you already have some type of like shielding and banishing ritual, it probably works really well. And if you want to add a little bit more, then you can just make a little mention of something in that. And if you don't have like a shielding and grounding practice, try it out. There's tons of different options out there. And it's something that even if you just do for a little while, it might help you kind of reset. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it, right? You're your own authority, your own sovereignty with all of these things. All right, so let me check the comments and then we're pretty much done. So if you have any questions, let me know. M mentioned that it would be interesting to see poems written with this study in mind. The way of the energy of them may make you feel differently. Yeah, I agree. And actually, like most things that are like anciently written were poems or prose because they didn't have the materials to write a book. It was very expensive to get paper, or can you imagine carving like a massive book in stone? I mean, people did not do that, and it was expensive to print, and it was hand done. I mean, the printing press wasn't even invented for till modern history, so people were painting these things out by hand to get a book, which is wild to think about. But yeah, like it was a lot of work. And so people actually put a lot of intention in those words. So sometimes those older poems and older things and grimoires and stuff like that, like there could be a lot of intention in every single thing. So it is really interesting to look at that. And I think you can feel it. Like you'll feel how it flows based off of the words. So I think it's very fascinating. I'm a pretty avid reader myself, like all kinds of stuff. Fiction, nonfiction, like not necessarily witchy. So yeah, it is interesting to think about that, especially with poetry. And I'm glad that you got Buckland's in your cart. It's one of the OG books in witchcraft, and it stands the test of time. Like I know sometimes there's people like, oh, it's an old book, like it doesn't maybe have info that we want, but I think a lot of times the older ones have if they stand the test of time, they're good. And Jenny, yes, I will put the books in the comments. And these, not necessarily ones I would recommend unless they are ones that speak to you. They're just ones that I have as examples. I'll put them in the chat, but the Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, I mean, this is such a classic. It really kind of covers a little bit of everything. So I think it's good. Even more like with more advanced stuff. Like when I revisit this book, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's a good book. This one is, I don't love this book, but it's the one that I have. It's the Kabbalistic Encyclopedia by David Goodwin. And there's no sense in getting a book like this unless you are really studying Kabbalah. It would just be not helpful, to be honest. So I think, yeah, if you are wanting to study Kabbalah and like maybe even some of the grimoires and stuff, like and sigils, but like specifically with the Western esoteric like occult stuff, this book is good. I'm trying to see if I could find some examples of like some of the sigil things in here. But it's going to be like, obviously the title tells you, right? But it's very heavily aligned to Kabbalah. Because it does have sigils in here, like a lot of the archangels and demonic ones and stuff that you would see. Here's so if you're doing like demonology, it's probably a pretty solid book to have. Things like that. But yeah, otherwise, here's like the sigil. It has like the angelic and the demonic ones. So I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, I have like my notes blocking half my image. But yeah, it has like all the stuff kind of shoved in here with it. And then this book has, I think it's like multiple books in one, but it's another good resource. this is a pretty advanced book. Like if you open it and you're not advanced, you're probably not going to know what's going on. But it has like the table of correspondences for kind of everything. Um, it's written in I don't know if Middle English is the right word. It was written in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, so it's hard to read. But it's a solid classic. Like, yeah, if any of these books besides Buckland's, I would say get this one. And then if I can find my numerology book, I will put that in the comments too. The one I have, I really like it. It's kind of more like simple, but it has a whole bunch of stuff at the really, it's very easy to understand, very digestible, and it covers a lot of ground. So I think it's a good one. So I will add the titles all in the chat. And yeah, hopefully the info on that is helpful. All right, well, I don't see any more comments, and so I hope this live was interesting for you and maybe made you think about things differently. And thanks for being flexible with me on the timing. Had a long, crazy work day. Stuff shifts around sometimes for my job, and I can't always keep the time I created a couple months prior. So thanks for your patience. I'm glad you're here. And if anyone is watching on the replay, definitely drop your comments. I'll keep track of them through the month and then put it on YouTube as well. All right, well, thanks for joining, and I hope you all have a fabulous rest of the day.